All right, so we're going to check out how Adam's rib, how the whole idea that Eve was coming from Adam's rib was because of sexism.
You've probably heard that Eve was formed from one of Adam's ribs, but
Well, we don't know if it was one of Adam's rib. It could have been multiple amounts of Adam's ribs. We don't know. It could have been like 5 ribs, 10 ribs. The good thing about ribs is that ribs is one of the few bones in your body that once you break them, it can actually grow back as long as you have the membrane still on the bone. It could actually grow back. And that's one of the amazing things about ribs. And that's one of the amazing things about the human body. Like, your leg doesn't grow back, but your rib grows back. Like, that's amazing, right?
the reason behind that translation choice might be misogyny. Wait, what? Yeah, in the Bible,
Yeah, I put on my glasses too.
there's actually a proper anatomic word for a rib bone. It's the Aramaic Allah, and we see it in
Oh my gosh, this is so stupid. You realize that the that Genesis wasn't made in Aramaic, right? It was made in Hebrew. So why would they use an Aramaic word when the book was made in Hebrew, buddy? Oh, 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 is it just sexism, or is it because you're ignorant of how languages work, bud?
places like Daniel, where a bear has 3 rib
Oh my god, this is just horrible. The book of Daniel came like hundreds of thousands of years after Genesis. So why even use it? Furthermore, the book of Daniel was made in Aramaic. So why would they use an Aramaic word for fucking a book made in Hebrew? It makes no fucking sense. It's like me looking at the book of Daniel and saying it's mistranslated because it didn't use a Greek word. Like, it doesn't make any sense. No.
bones in his mouth. But in Genesis, when Eve is being formed, it says that God took a selah from Adam. And this word is never translated as rib anywhere else in the Bible.
That's because of the context. I mean, literally, God opened like Adam and then took something out of it. What do you think it was, bud? It was a rib, supposedly, or
You've probably
multiple
heard
ribs.
that Eve
Fuck.
was formed from one of Adam as rib anywhere else in the Bible. In all 40 other instances, it's either translated as half or side.
It 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 doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. Is he gonna use this idea that it translated as half or side to like promote the idea that Eve was equally uh, created from Adam's flesh? Like, that matters. Like, that matters whatsoever. But Eve was equally made from Adam's flesh, which would anatomically make no fucking sense. But I'll get back to that.
Like in Exodus 37, the Ark of the Covenant has 2 separate sides.
Nice fighting of sexism. Just compare a woman to a literal object. Objectification.
Or the 2 sides on the split door that
Comparing women more to objects. Literally objectification.
leads into Solomon's temple. But, if you're interested in promoting a worldview in which women are subordinate to men, it doesn't really help you to have an origin story where Eve comes from an equal part of Adam.
I mean, how about just have an origin story where both of them were created at the same time? Or have an origin story where Eve doesn't convince Adam to eat the apple? Which I don't blame Eve for that. I blame Adam since he was older, but that's just me. Alright, so let's see how English translations ruined the Song of Solomon, I guess.
The Bible often try to make it sound less erotic. Song of Solomon is filled with sensual expression between 2 lovers, like this line, "My beloved is like a sachet of myrrh, who spins all night between my breasts." but I think some of the fellows must have been uncomfortable with how steamy that sounds, like the JPS translation changes it to, "My beloved is like a bag of myrrh." And then it almost comically changes it to say that the bag is lodged between my breasts.
I would think they would try to change the between my breast thing to be like between my chest or between my person, but no, they're just using shorthands like for like the bag and stuff like that. Like the central part is like the breast. Who cares if you use sachet or bag? I think they're just changing the wording so they won't get sued for plagiarism. Like that's it. I mean, the central part is still there, like you know, like breasts. That's the central part. Who gives a damn about using a sachet or bag? Like, who cares? Like, nobody's aroused by the bag. Like, oh man, he used sachet. Like, I think that's pretty much it. All right, so here are four ways how the English Bible changes Eve.
4 ways that the English translations of the Bible may have changed the origin story of Eve. The first is the translation of Eve coming from Adam's rib bone. What the text actually says is that Eve came from a side of Adam. So in rabbinic literature, you'll see this imagined as Adam and Eve being split from equal halves.
How is a side a half of a person? A side is smaller than a half, so if they were cut in half, and first of all, this would make no sense because if Adam was cut in half and Eve had two legs, then Adam needed to have at least four legs, well, actually, three legs on each side of his body for that to work out. Or Adam would have to have at least he would have to have four legs, but he would have to have three legs on one side of his body so Eve could have two legs. And then once he loses the two legs, he would have one leg on one side of his body and the other leg on the next. Like it would just be ridiculous. Like I would really like to see how rabbinic literature like would paint Adam with like three legs on one side of his body, because if he had an extra leg, then if you cut him equally in half, he would just have one half of his body with two legs.
The second is the translation of Eve being made.
And no, and it it's it's translated correctly, or at least good enough, when it says rib. Like, nobody would actually read the story in which God opens Adam's side to actually like just take half of his body. They just missed the whole open part of the story to begin with. They would say he cut him in half, which sounds disgusting. Adam would have to have two hearts, and I would assume that God would have to cut him on the left side, and I guess women come from the left.
As a helper for Adam. The Hebrew word here is actually closer to the word rescuer. Then you may remember.
What did Eve rescue Adam from? Eve doomed Adam. So it would make no sense if Eve rescued Adam. She's the one who tempted Adam to eat the fruit. Like, wow. That's like God, that's like somebody coming to my house and then tempt me to drink bleach. Like, that wouldn't be a rescuer.
The line in English that as a punishment, Eve's desire will be for her husband. But other translations, like the ESV, say that Eve's desire will be contrary to her husband.
I don't know why they say contrary to her husband. Um, I don't know what was the logic of the ESV, because contrary is opposite to her husband. But I don't know their translation idea. I don't know if they read the Hebrew and thought to themselves that that, oh, it means the opposite, because contrary means the opposite.
And lastly, there's that popular idea that painful childbirth is the result of the curse of sin. But the plain interpretation of the text is that there will be difficulty in conception. I think it's important.
Okay. I mean, no. I mean, it distinctly talks about like pains in childbirth, or at least that's what the text I read. It doesn't. It it wouldn't make sense if it said pain in conception, like she couldn't get pregnant, like she was sterile. I don't know how not getting pregnant would cause pains in your body. I don't really know. And this dude literally reacted to me a few years ago once I talked about this. How Adam was created. Anyway. Yeah, I asked him which rabbinic literature is he referencing to, but he didn't really get back to me on that. But yeah, I mean, and then I'm like, and then I also replied here, just because it's side doesn't mean it's half of a person. So what? Do you think that Adam was walking around like with one leg, one arm? Yeah, I just said that, like one leg, one arm, one rib cage, since half of it was taken. And then, of course, save him from what hunger when he started. Yeah, and four makes more sense than contrary. I don't see a breakdown of the Hebrew. I meant word, not bird. But yeah, he actually reacted to me a long time ago. Um, and I don't really care about rabbinic literature because it came out like thousands of years after the Genesis, so it was basically irrelevant. It's just basically fan theories.